name is Corinna Cohn. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my mindset when I was a teenager and maybe retrospectively think about what factored into my decision making at the time and what I would recommend to other people who are in a similar path right now as they consider their decisions about whether what sort of identity things that they want to pursue. So going back to when I was a teenager, I was growing up in the 80s. I turned 15 in 1990. So that was 1990 was pretty close to the peak of the AIDS epidemic crisis. At that time, culturally, there were not really, if you're going to ask like who's a famous gay person that you know about, somebody probably would have said, well, I think Liberace's gay. But there weren't really a lot of people who were out and gay. I think maybe Boy George might have been somebody said, oh yeah, I think Boy George is gay. But it really culturally was not acceptable to be gay. And even within my own family, I have an uncle who is gay and was accepted by the family. But I think this is probably pretty typical. Even if you have a gay family member, that's not something that your family would say, oh, being gay is great. It was more like, oh, we love your uncle anyway. Not we love him because he's part of the family and we love everybody in the family. But it was like, yeah, he's got this fault, but you know, we still love everybody in our family. It was more like that. And for my own part, I didn't have a very good relationship with my father, and I don't have any older brothers, and didn't have any close male family members who really helped me understand anything about masculinity or being a man. I was often picked on in school for various reasons. Most of it could be boiled down to is that I wasn't very good at the social stuff. And that probably makes it a lot easier for you to be picked on. When I was about in middle school, I got really fixated on this idea that if I wasn't a boy, that if I could instead be a girl, that a lot of the things that were very difficult for me would be a lot easier. And this was about the time that I started puberty maybe a little bit later than average, but within the normal range. But as I started getting a little older and a little bit towards high school, I realized I like that whole time, like you're supposed to, if you're a young man, you're supposed to start developing an interest in girls, and I didn't. And as part of this idea of myself that if I could only be a girl, it was a lot easier to understand through that lens why I might have some attraction to men. It's because clearly, if you are a girl and you're attracted to men, that's very natural. That's normal. That's how it's supposed to be. And that sort of built on my fixation of wanting to change my gender. So while I was experiencing some romantic attraction to some of my friends and some of my classmates, I did not interpret that as a gay attraction at all. I reworked that or transformed that into what is, in retrospect, not very reasonable or rational, but I transformed that into I had a crush on the boys that I liked, and I would like to become the sort of woman that they would be attracted to. Not realizing that in several of the cases, the boys that I was interested in, that after high school, they came out as gay anyway. I guess it's maybe early built-in gaydar of some sort. So I transitioned when I was, started medical transition when I was 18, had a sex reassignment when I was 19. And from that point, I felt like I was finished with transition and I would be able to start pursuing relationships. And several, that same year that I had sex reassignment surgery, I was having relationships with men. And it was actually terrible because with sex reassignment surgery, there is considerable rearrangement of your genitals, period. But whenever you're doing that sort of extensive surgery on an area that has such delicate nerves, what you should expect in general is that you're going to lose sensation and particularly erotic sensation. And one of the things that I didn't understand at the time about vaginoplasty is that it is pretty normal. I don't know if it's more typical than not, but it's pretty normal that males who have vaginoplasty are not going to be able to enjoy intercourse with a man through that mechanical means. And I still identified as a woman. I still was trying to put myself into that social role as a woman. And it created a lot of internal conflict with me for numerous reasons. But as it relates to relationships, one of the biggest reasons is that when I would date a man and we were getting along pretty well, that man would not want me to be part of his social life at all. He didn't want his friends to know. He didn't want his family to know. The places that we would go, if there's going to be any public displays of affection, would be places that were a little out of the way. And it became very obvious that the thing that was happening in these relationships was not a healthy meeting of equals who were trying to get something out of a partnership or relationship, but rather that I was becoming involved with men who had a it's more accurate to say a fetishistic interest in me as a transsexual. So while I was trying to find love and companionship and a meeting of equals and something that we could support each other and love each other and have a relationship beyond the physical part, that's not what the men who were interested in me wanted. And I was still thinking of myself as a woman at the time, even though I'm not. And it was just really confusing. It created a lot of dissonance. So that's some context. So just picture that for a second. Going backwards a little bit. Teenager who convinces himself that he is a girl, pursues medical treatments to become a woman, experiences adulthood and all of the relationships that he's in as not as a gay man, but as a transsexual, and then gets into his 40s, me, and starts to say, well, what can I salvage at this point? If I want to have a relationship with somebody, I want somebody who's going to see me not as a sexual object, not as something to fulfill a sexual urge, but somebody who's going to be my partner. So realistically, what is that going to be? It's has to be a man, because I don't want to have a relationship with a woman. It's got to be somebody who has more than just a fetishistic interest in me and who I am, and has to be somebody who regards me as male. So what does that mean practically? It means that I'm trying to find a partner at this point who is gay and is not ashamed about it, like I was as a teenager, and is willing to take me as I am, despite the fact that I've been surgically transformed into something that not all men would be willing to recognize as another man. So that is where we are right now. And I am not the only person who is going through this type of experience. I've been talking to a number of other young men who started transition even earlier than I did, who are realizing that even though it can be, there might be some parts of being in this world as trans, or people treating you like you're a woman, that might actually be very fun. That's not actually a way to actually be in the world permanently and connect with people and build actual solid relationships, or even really to build your identity around. It's a house built on sand. And whereas we would have opportunities to at some point, if we had been young gay men, we would have had opportunities to meet people on a similar track, or meet men who might be a little bit more experienced, and help us in culture ourselves as gay men. We didn't get any of that. And so we are people who've been medically transformed to be feminized with estrogen and other surgeries. And we are trying to figure out how to find relationships and partners with people that we're attracted to without having any form of being in gay culture at all. It's more accurate to say we're same-sex attracted males than we are gay men, because we're just not in the gay scene. So this is part of the challenge that I'm working through currently, and I am here in some sense to represent that this is a thing that's happening, and that having this sort of same-sex attraction when you're young and you feel like you have a difficult time relating to men, which I did, and a lot of my other trans brothers, I guess we could say, have also had these same sort of problems. When you feel like you've been alienated from manhood and you're still attracted to men, then what do you do? Transition sounds like a very promising path, especially as it's marketed right now, because there's this promise that is made that you can become a beautiful woman. And what they do is they take the most archetypical transitioners, the ones who appear most feminine, which usually involves numerous surgeries and hormones, of course, and voice training so that you can speak in that higher register, which I don't have to do anymore. And like all of this stuff, this artificiality to build up this image, so that you can replicate the types of like hyper feminized caricatures that men are supposed to find attractive, so that in the hopes that you're able to find a man who will treat you well. And it's a little bit bonkers. So that's a little bit of background about me, my being a young same-sex attracted person that got pulled into the route of transition.